Britain, or if you can't think of Britain, any other country?
So rather than from last month, we've observed two that have very specifically targeted the UK. The last one was in early 2024. That was a network that we disrupted that originated in Iran. It was a relatively small number of accounts, and actually it's kind of quite typical of some of the things we see, in as much as some of those accounts were created several months prior, looked like they were posting relatively benign content, but we observed coordinated behaviour in early 2024 and disrupted that. We then subsequently saw a level of recidivism in April of 2024 and July of 2024 as well. That's not to say that the UK isn't the wider subject of broader geographic attempts from networks to disrupt, but one that was specifically targeted to the UK, that would be an example.
Okay. I wonder, Mr. Fernandez, could I ask the same questions to you?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you, Chair Thornberry, and the members of the committee. And hello also to Chair Onwurah. Good to see you. So at X, our mission is to serve the public conversation and balancing freedom of expression with the need to enforce against manipulation of the public conversation. So we define coordinated inauthentic behavior as the operation of multiple accounts to artificially influence or disrupt conversations. So that could mean infiltrating trends or hashtags, or engagement through sort of identical content, or what we call copy pasta, operation of bot networks, or any sort of deceptive amplification. And so we combat this through our policies, which are rooted in authenticity, that address sort of multiple dimensions of authenticity. First is the authenticity of the content. So we prohibit misleading or manipulated media that could cause public confusion or harm, and inauthentic accounts. So banning fake personas, addressing issues of impersonation, which we see a lot of around election time. Unauthorized automation. So recently we shipped new updates to our API developer policy to restrict the ability for developers to program automated replies unless their account is specifically mentioned. And then coordination, so restricting that artificial engagement. And so that's how we define it.
Do you have an example of one?
In major elections, we typically see different campaigns, I think commonly from China or Russia. We certainly saw that in the 2024 election here in the United States. So there are different campaigns throughout, depending on the sort of moment.
Do you think that there's been an example of inauthentic coordinated behaviour on X in the UK recently?
Our teams investigated this issue as recently as the last election in 2024, and we didn't see any evidence of that on X.
And I wonder, Mr. Agronovich, would you mind also being able to answer that question, please?
Absolutely. Thank you again for the opportunity to participate in this really important discussion. I've been with Meta now for a little over 7 years, and so I'm happy to be able to talk to the CIB policy. I was actually part of writing, I think, the industry's first coordinated inauthentic behavior policy 7 years ago. Our definition for coordinated inauthentic behavior looks somewhat similar to our partners across the industry. We essentially look for coordinated networks using false identities and adversarial behavior to conceal their activities and mislead our users. Again, that has roughly 3 core tests. The first test is it a network, right? So are there multiple accounts or other assets, pages, groups, the like on our services that are working together to do something? What are they doing? Second test, misleading our users, generally about who they are, who's behind the operation, where they might be located. And then how are they doing that? That's the third test. They're using false identities that could be fake accounts or personas, or it could be, for example, misleading people about where they're located or who's behind the activity. How do we enforce on those operations? So since the beginning, when we found CIB networks, we conduct a deep dive investigation to try and identify the entirety of the operational network. The idea there being that these are among the most severe violations of our policies. We don't want them on our services, and we want to make as big of an impact on the bad guys behind the network as possible. So once we've identified the network, we'll take down that network. We'll put in place steps, both automated and scaled tools, as well as continuing investigations to keep that network off of our services. And then we will share information both publicly and with industry partners to enable further enforcement on the network, and also to help people who use our services or the general public know what that network was doing. Our underlying thesis there is the people behind covert influence operations want to stay covert. So if we can essentially blow their cover, right, shine some sunlight on their operations, it could potentially raise the costs against them for their operations.
Would you like to use this opportunity to give us an example of one of these
Yes.
attempted manipulations that has been targeted on Britain through Meta?
Absolutely. So in addition to the Iran example that my colleague from TikTok mentioned, which our teams also had identified and enforced against in 2024, another operation that I imagine many of you are familiar with is known publicly as Doppelganger. That is an operation from Russia. Our teams first discovered Doppelganger several years ago, and we assess it to be one of Russia's most prolific and ongoing operations, targeting the UK as well as a number of countries in Europe and the United States. Doppelganger uses websites that conceal themselves as legitimate media outlets, as well as more than 300 other social media platforms, including our services, where they attempt to undermine support for countries that are supporting Ukraine in their ongoing war with Russia, and support countries that are against Ukraine in the war with Russia. Since we first identified that network, we've taken down hundreds of different assets across our services, as well as blocked thousands of websites they've created. We've also shared more than 6,000 web domains, X accounts, and other cross-social media indicators publicly through our GitHub repository, where we see those networks operating on other services.
Thank you. I think that and I thank you for casting some light on what Meta does to detect inauthentic, coordinated behaviour. I wondered if, though, it was possible for you, Mr. Fernandez, to tell us what X does in order to identify this.
Yeah, we have a mix of human and automated interventions here. This is behavior, so we do focus on the behavior of accounts. So we do look at a host of both account signals and technical signals to detect it and enforce it at scale, which largely results in suspension of these networks. And then we have measures to enforce against evasions of these bans. And so, yeah, pretty straightforward and rhymes with, I think, the other platforms' approach. And again, can't get into too much technical detail without, disclosing sensitive details that may give bad actors playbooks to evade these interventions.
I mean, there's been quite a lot of publicity about the 1,300 Scottish nationalists that were based in Iran, expressing themselves on Twitter, whose network closed down when the internet in Iran was closed down in the summer and then in early January. I wondered whether those 1,300 accounts that had 224 million views on Twitter had finally been closed down.
We have actioned a number of accounts. I don't have the specific number in front of me, but I do know we've actioned a number of accounts that sort of correlate to that public reporting.
And how did you find them? Was it through the media or did you find it yourself?
It was a mix of both team detection and reporting that assisted that.
Is there any further that you'd want to say in terms of I think you did explain on behalf of your company what it was that TikTok does in order to try to identify these malign actors. So perhaps if I move on to Alex.
Thank you. So some of you covered the actions you take after identifying, but I think it might be helpful again just to go through those. So what range of enforcement actions can you take, whether that's content removal, account lockdowns, etc. And then do you preserve evidence of of those actions for external scrutiny, for law enforcement to look at it, and the like. And maybe if we could start with Mr. Agranovich, please.
Absolutely. Thank you for your questions. So first, the actions that we take for enforcement. And if it's okay with you, I'd break that into what do we do about clandestine influence operations, so CIB, and then what do we do about overt influence for example, state-controlled media entities. On the covert side, we take a pretty aggressive approach. When we find these operations, and once we've built out the networks, we understand what to enforce against, we remove everything that's part of that network. We also take steps to try and identify the people and organizations behind those clandestine influence operations. And so when we can do that, if, for example, they have real accounts on our services, we'll also ban those individuals from using our services. And if we can identify organizations, for example, Russia's Internet Research Agency, that are primarily organized to conduct CIB, we will also ban those organizations and anything they might have on our services from our services. In addition to those initial enforcements, we have a number of automated kind of scaled detection systems that we train on the takedowns that we do. And then those systems are designed to continuously run and keep them off of our services should they try and come back, which we know they generally try to do. We also share, as appropriate, information with law enforcement and government, in part because we know that getting their accounts taken down isn't always the biggest personal cost, but getting indicted, sanctioned, or having other kind of real world consequences can be significantly more effective. And then we'll share with industry partners so that they can conduct their own investigations, and should they find violations, also take down those networks. We want the people behind clandestine IO to know that using Facebook not only carries a cost for their assets on our services, but may also carry a cost for the entirety of their operation. On the overt IO side, we're a bit more careful here, in part because of guidance we received from kind of media freedom and access experts as we developed our state media programs. But on state media, we label state-controlled media from a number of countries, in particular Russia and Iran and China, so that people know on our services that they are seeing content from a state-controlled entity. We also, particularly on Russia, take additional steps that Russian state media cannot, for example, advertise on our services or otherwise gain kind of paid amplification. In addition to that, when people try to visit, for example, Russian state media entities, links on our websites, they also get an interstitial warning them that they are going to a Russian state-controlled, under the editorial control of the Russian state media outlet. What do we do to preserve information? So on our covert IO enforcements, we do preserve information in the event of a kind of law enforcement inquiry, including in cases where we've shared proactively with law enforcement. We also report publicly, I think as my colleague from TikTok mentioned, we report publicly on a regular basis. We now do semi-annual reports on the CIB networks that we've taken down. When we do that, we talk about the assets they used, their tactics, what they talked about, as well as we include what we call kind of indicators of compromise, so threat indicators on other service platforms that people can use to draw a more comprehensive picture of what those operations may have been doing.
Thank you. And what is the time scale between you identifying inauthentic behavior, taking action on it, and then does that change in like particularly high important situations? So maybe an election or the war in Iran, these sort of crises.
Yeah. So the timescale varies, but we always endeavor to move as quickly as possible. The caveat being we have to make sure that we've identified the network and conducted our investigation. We are often talking on the order of kind of days to weeks at most here, oftentimes much less, hours to days to identify and enforce. And during crisis situations, one thing that we've seen over the past few years is influence operations rarely can spin up really, really fast when a crisis starts. Often what we'll see is existing networks that may have been kind of dormant pivot to the ongoing crisis. A great example, so we are, as you can imagine, very focused on what's happening around the crisis in Iran right now. But given that we're just in that first week, haven't seen kind of substantial new activity from influence networks there. We do have teams that are dedicated to tracking Iranian origin CIB networks. And so I imagine What you might see, though...
We've seen
Oh, yeah,
lots
sorry,
of...
go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, as a committee, we've seen lots of examples of this. We've seen, particularly
Yes.
in Romania and Moldova, accounts that were created that lay dormant, and then suddenly overnight, because there's an election or there's a particular issue, they will suddenly spring into life. And that's really worried us when we heard that could happen in the UK.
Yes, I think you're calling out a great example. The example I was going to give was actually in the early days of Russia's invasion of Ukraine 4 years ago. The pattern we saw there was almost exactly as you described, where these dormant accounts, often in countries like Romania and Moldova, where they didn't have a lot of activity, the war began, and within about a week, they had pivoted to targeting issues around Russia's invasion. And so when we identified those networks, we took them down immediately. But then what we also do is continue monitoring for when they try and build new capabilities. So around crises, we do surge resources and capacity towards looking for activity targeting the crisis.
Thank you. Mr. Fernandez, same question. What actions do you take when you've identified the behaviour, and what information do you preserve for law enforcement and others? Oh, I don't think... can we get his microphone turned on? Please. Thank you. Hopefully you can speak now.
Yes, indeed. Following the chair's direction to sort of rhyme with what my colleague has said, similar measures in terms of takedown and collaboration with law enforcement, to the extent that the committee or any sort of organ within the UK government has signals or intelligence that they would want to share about activity that they're seeing of concern that's potential coordinated and authentic behavior. We welcome that. We welcome that partnership for sure.
I'm sorry to cut through, but we had a certain amount of difficulty finding someone to represent X at this hearing, because we had some difficulty finding out who might be the representative in the UK. I think there is somebody who's on maternity leave, but we're not aware of anyone else. There seems to be somebody else who really does sound like a bot. We don't think that is a person, and we're very grateful to you for coming along to answer questions. But if we did know of the X platform being manipulated, who would we report it to in the UK?
You can certainly route that to me. We also have an alias that goes to our team that I believe your committee should have. So there's certainly several of us here.
An alias? Is that the bot?
Yeah. No, not a bot.
There's some kind of thing which really does sound like a robot talking to us. That doesn't make any sense. So we tried the robot and we tried the person on maternity leave, but we've genuinely not been able to find anyone else. And we have tried. And I believe that Dame Chi also tried to find someone too, didn't you?
Yeah. Yes, it took us some time as well.
And did you find a British representative? Did you find a representative of X in Britain? No.
Not one who was willing or effective to speak to us.
Well, I'm certainly willing, and I know I've been in touch with your staff chair, and so our commitment is certainly to be responsive to your intelligence sharing and your information requests and all that. So please, by all means, I'm not sure which bot you're referring to. We don't have.
I think we'll certainly share the information with you, but it's just that your title is Head of Americas, so perhaps it should be Head of Americas and UK, so that we have someone we can talk to. Yes,
that title is ceremonial. I do work across jurisdictions, and we are a lean global team that help plug in where we can. So by all means, you can certainly rest on me.
Thank you. I suppose the same question about reaction time, and then with the war going on in Iran at the moment, there's been lots of reports about misinformation being shared on X. There's an FT article talking lots of fake satellite information, lots of AI-generated videos showing attacks that haven't happened and the like. What action are you taking with regards to this activity, and has your speed changed at all because we are in sort of a war situation?
Yeah, and unfortunately, a posture that we're well accustomed to, and so in response to the Iran conflict, we've remained vigilant and steadfast, and taken proactive action on thousands of accounts. We stood up our incident response protocol and have been conducting manual sweeps as well as automated interventions as soon as 3 hours after the initial strikes occurred. And these sweeps are running 24/7 since the crisis response protocol was initiated. And that's supplemented by working group meetings that bring together experts across our company. And so we're scaling this enforcement based on certain heuristics of the conversation and other defenses that can detect and enforce against the new forms of violative content. I think what you've seen in this conflict and recently in different types of scenarios is the power and effectiveness of community notes. So community notes have been shown on more than 20,000 posts and have been seen more than 120 million times so far because of the media matching that we have. So, community notes combined with our enforcement of synthetic and manipulated media and our enforcement of our spam and platform manipulation, we have, several different interventions there that help aid and enforcing against manipulation of the platform.
I've reported a few accounts myself, just as an ex-user, and often I get a report 2 or 3 days later that your community note has been accepted, and of course, millions of people maybe in that time have seen the misinformation, and it stays up even with the community note on after they don't seem to be taken down. Do you think that is more effective than what you had before community notes, where these things would be more proactively taken down?
Yeah, we're always looking to increase the speed of notes. We introduced lightning notes, which tries to get community notes up there faster, and we endeavoring to scale the network of contributors. So we have about 1.25 million contributors globally, over 76,000 in the UK alone. So as we onboard more contributors, that will help with the speed. Also, when a user requests a note, which any user may do, we have now started to experiment with what we call collaborative notes. So AI will actually draft the note, and then the user that requested can offer suggestions to the note or edit the note. And then it goes to the network of contributors to rate. So sometimes it does take time, and others it can happen quite quickly, in a matter of minutes or hours. But we are endeavoring to make it faster every single day. So the team's super focused on that.
Thank you. And Mr. Law, same questions.
Sure thing, and I'll try and keep it brief. So coordinated behaviour like this is a breach of our terms of service. So the action that we take is to remove all accounts, all content that is posted. Once we remove a network, we catalogue its behaviour, and that enables us to take quicker and more forceful action if we get any signals of it re-emerging, and we can take a compressed process towards that. And that's the aspect that I mentioned earlier in terms of recidivism. We also ensure that we do preserve information. As I say, we publish things on a monthly basis, so all of the information relating to networks that we have disrupted is available on a public basis, on a month-by-month basis. Where appropriate, and indeed in the case of the UK example that I gave, we will brief governments ahead of that publication of our findings. You asked about time. I think I echo a lot of what my colleagues said from Meta. It is worth saying that these are complex and sophisticated networks, and so the aim is to ensure that when you move against all of the network. It's a bit like one of those kind of dawn police raids where you have to have sufficient level of evidence to be able to go all at the same time, so that you are taking the totality of the problem all at once. And also, as we mentioned, lots of these accounts may be set up, either lie dormant or post benign content until being activated. And so in terms of kind of start time to finish time, it will vary on a case-by-case basis. But as breaches of our terms of service, as breaches of our guidelines, this is something that we try and move with the swiftest thing possible. We also, though, do have to be sure, and I suppose that that's an important point here, which is that, getting a sufficient level of threshold for evidence is absolutely paramount, because given that the content itself may not be violative, otherwise the risk that you are taking is to potentially shut down democratic discourse at a time when views are being exchanged. So high level of certainty is necessary, but certainly something that we move very, very swiftly towards.
Yes,
just interested in this point, because certainly during some of our trips to certain countries, and this isn't to lay the blame in any way entirely at the feet of the social media companies, because there's also the the other side of it, which is state institutions acting to, there is a flagging process where a member of the public may identify something as misinformation or disinformation. They may flag that to the relevant enforcement or electoral commission or whoever it may be. They will have their own internal process in order to go through before they come to you to ask you to instigate your internal process, at which point, at some point further down the line, that single account or video or whatever it might be may have been maybe removed or get a fairly pointless community note, whatever it might be. But none of this process seems fit for a social media world. Yes. In which the information is spread and disseminated so quickly, in which the influence and the number of eyeballs that it has achieved can be counted in hours, certainly not in days or weeks. So whether you're looking at the response of government or response of the state or response of yourself, it doesn't feel like it's fit for purpose in dealing with the spread of misinformation and disinformation. Is that fair?
So I think this is where I'd return to the point that the chair made at the start as to the breadth of what we're talking about here, because the comments that I've just made were specific to covert influence operations, and all of the content that is being posted still goes through our content moderation process. And we have community guidelines that prohibit mis- and disinformation, irregardless of its intent, but if it has the potential to significantly harm society or individuals. And that is aside from whether or not this is coordinated behaviour, but if there is misinformation and disinformation being spread, then our usual content moderation process is designed to pick that up and act upon it. What does that mean? It means that upon every upload of every video to TikTok, automated moderation runs on all of those videos. It will apply AI models and other tools to scan for potentially violative content. Some of that is more straightforward. Something like nudity, pornography is prohibited on our platform. AI models are very good at being able to identify that, block it from upload. But when it comes to mis and disinformation, we maintain a centralized database of conspiracy theories that have been deemed to reach the threshold of mis and disinformation, and we can block on that basis. If we are unsure, either ourselves or because of reports passed to us, we can pass it to the independent fact checkers that we work with. They will assess it and either verify it, label it unverified, or tell us that they can't be sure, and then we have a range of options that we can take from our moderation perspective on that basis. That includes taking down that information or restricting it from the For You feed, which is the way in which most people use TikTok. The stats that we have on that are improving all the time. So from a misinformation perspective, we remove 99% on a proactive basis, i.e. that has been not reported to us but via our own detection. We remove 90% of it with 0 views, 95% within 2 hours. None of that is to say that we've achieved what we're set out to, and it's a race that is never run, but the content moderation process is designed to tackle mis- and disinformation at source before you ever get to an assessment of whether that was coordinated behaviour or not. The coordinated behaviour bit that ends at this spectrum here is, after we have determined that it doesn't breach our community guidelines, or indeed that it doesn't breach other elements of inauthenticity, such as spamming, fake engagement, which are run in parallel as well. So it is a multi-layered approach that is designed for the utmost efficacy.
And that sounds great, but it's not. It doesn't coincide with our experience. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to go into Romania, but let me talk about Moldova. I mean, according to the World Service, there was a Russian-backed interference exercise, and they bought votes, there were cyber attacks, there were fake bomb attacks, there was disinformation. And disinformation, this is in the Moldovan 25 elections, so just last year, on TikTok, the disinformation activity was 23 million views, 860,000 likes. I mean, this is something which just sprang up at the time of an election. And you're telling us that you take it all down without anybody seeing anything. But the World Service says 23 million views of disinformation promoted by Russia to try to influence the Moldovan elections. And obviously our concern as a Foreign Affairs Committee is they can do it in Moldova, they can do it in the UK.
Very much appreciate the concern. It's a concern that we have, of course, too, because fundamentally at the heart of the TikTok experience is people getting an authentic experience with genuine views and exchanges. I think, and look, I'm happy to talk about Romania as well. You know, the sophistication of the actors that we're talking about does mean that we will continue to see all of the platforms that are both giving evidence today and indeed a series of other platforms as continued vectors for attempts from
absolutely.
hostile
I mean, the
actors
fact that three of you are here, you're only representative of a much wider problem. I mean, I appreciate that, and we are grateful to you for coming.
Thank you. But I mean, you know, in those instances, and indeed in Romania, we still did indeed observe and disrupt the networks that we were referring to. I think what this in part...
Only after the election was called off.
Well, in Romania, we disrupted from September 2024 onwards and reported in November and December of 2024. And it's also the case that whenever we go into an election, and from TikTok's perspective, we launched in 2017, we've been through about 250 elections worldwide. We have a series of steps that we put in place to ensure that not only are we trying to enforce against our community guidelines on mis and disinformation, and by the way, hateful content, not only are we undertaking what I've set out from a covert influence operation perspective, but we are also ensuring that whenever any content is posted in relation to the election, we have links that are clearly displayed at the bottom that link to authoritative sets of information. Commonly in the UK, we will do an election hub. We work with the Electoral Commission on that basis that will provide information about how and where to vote, the ability to sign up for voting, further information about media literacy tips, how to spot potential hoaxes or misinformation. None of that is to absolve our responsibility to stop it at source, and that is why we continue to invest in the way that we do. I would agree with you that it remains a substantial threat, but it is one that we are putting at the very top of our priority list, both from a community guidelines perspective and from a covert influence operations perspective.
Any more questions? Richard.
Thank you very much for your description of the processes. I feel like we've been heavy on process so far and a little light on data. And so where it's useful to hear proportions such as 90% with 0 views, 95% within 2 hours, could we go beyond thinking about proportions to thinking about the raw data themselves? So perhaps if we could start with Meta, with Mr. Agranovich. Can I ask about the number of inauthentic networks that you have removed from your platform, please?
Absolutely. So we've taken down more than 250 coordinated inauthentic behavior networks from more than 70 different countries. They operated in more than 40 different languages. Roughly half of those were foreign influence operations, so they originated in one country, targeted another. The other half were domestic or a mix of domestic and foreign, so they were targeting audiences in the country that they were based in.
Thank you, and I'll come on in a minute to ask a little bit more about where. Mr. Fernandez, what about X, please?
Yeah, I don't have a specific number of networks that we've taken down, but just to give you a sense of the scale of actions against platform manipulation spam. So in 2024 alone, it was over 800 million accounts that we suspended under those policies, which encapsulate these coordinated inauthentic networks. We're finalizing our 2025 data, so we'll be publishing that shortly. But just in the latter part of last year, we took down, several hundred million accounts for spam and platform manipulation. So, the scale is massive. It's an ongoing challenge for our engineering and product teams, and it's, top priority for us to continue battling.
And Mr. Law, do you have raw data?
Yes, so I've just totted it up, 38 in the last 6 months. We have further month-by-month data that is available, which I haven't aggregated, but happy to do that subsequently. I think I would say, like other colleagues, that is a range of networks that originate from outside of the audience in which they were targeting, and networks that originate on a domestic basis as well. We also, within our transparency report, indicate whether or not this was a purely internal exercise or whether or not we took external reporting and signals as the beginning of our process.
And staying with you, Mr. Law, on those, I think you said 38
in the last 6 months.
Networks in the last 6 months. Could you give a a sort of a suggestion about where those networks may have been based geographically?
So I think it's important, just before I do that, to state that when we give the origin of a network, that is a pure location information. We are not making a judgment or a deliberation or a determination on who the specific actor may have been. We primarily do nevertheless see Russia as the origin, as the location in which more than any other networks will be influenced from. I mentioned Iran earlier, but that is of a lower order of magnitude than the Russians.
And what sort of themes or narratives were suffused in those Russian posts?
I think, like my colleague from Meta, we've observed influence on, or attempts to influence, discussions around the war with Ukraine. We've observed attempts to influence elections in other European and world countries as well. Sometimes the networks are purely, kind of pro the country that they originate from, and other times they are seeking to impact the democratic processes in target countries.
Nothing from China?
We've seen China as well. We've seen and disrupted Chinese originated networks towards Taiwan, for example.
I mean, could you expand on that example of what you saw originating from PRC in relation to Taiwan?
So I don't have the specific example in front of me, but I'm happy to go away and point towards it. As I say, we publish all of this information on a transparent basis.
Mr. Granovich, the same question for you around the geographic origins of those inauthentic networks, please.
Happy to. So similar to my colleague from TikTok, Russia is, I think, we would say the most prolific source of coordinated inauthentic behavior operations we've seen over the last 7 to 8 years. Roughly more than 40 of the operations that I'd mentioned originated in Russia. The next most prolific is Iran. More than 30 of those operations originated in Iran. And then the third most prolific for us is our operations from China. To your question about the narratives that they spread, so from Russian operations in the early days, so more than 4 years ago when the war in Ukraine intensified, Russian operations generally targeted a whole host of different issues, often both sides of those issues. And our assessment, even to quote one of the Russian operations, was that their goal was to undermine confidence in public debate and the information ecosystem, and less so that they had any particular issue that they were backing.
Yeah,
4 years ago, that changed. When the war intensified, to really be about undermining support for Ukraine. Iranian operations tend to focus on issues of geopolitical concern to Iran and their region. And Chinese operations, similarly, early on, generally were in Chinese, targeting Chinese diaspora populations. And then about 2 to 3 years ago, we began to see Chinese operations on our services using other languages, targeting audiences in English, still around issues generally of interest to Chinese geopolitical concerns or domestic issues like 5 poisons issues in China.
And then, Mr. Fernandez, what about X in terms of the geographic origins of those networks, please?
Yeah, I think the top three that were mentioned, Russia, China, Iran, is the same for us. With Russia typically being the leader amongst those three. And
for X, what are the sorts of narratives that you see in relation to Russia?
Taking the 2024 election in the United States, it's really to undermine, adversarial entities and jurisdictions, and stoke division, really narrative based, but also broad sort of operations in terms of number of accounts. So they try and sort of flood the zone with a particular type of narrative.
Could you give an example?
I don't have any examples in front of me, but happy to follow up with the committee with some examples.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, Mr. Fernandez, I just wanted to clarify something I thought I heard you say earlier, which was that you've removed 800 million accounts from X. Did I hear that right, or did I get that wrong?
Yeah, so in 2024, we had 799 and change million account suspensions under our spam and platform manipulation policy, which encompasses this sort of inauthentic behavior. So this behavior, the way it manifests on X is sort of spammy.
Be clear, when you say a suspension, is that a temporary suspension or a permanent removal?
No, permanent removal. These accounts.
Because I only ask the question just because the internet tells me you've only got about 600 million active users. So is there what's the number I'm missing here between the number of users of Twitter and the number of accounts that you're removing?
Yeah, so these aren't really sort of considered in that aggregate number. So, we kind of see these again as inauthentic accounts. These are not, real personas. So
you think
that is a separate calculation.
The 600 million that you've got as active users, they're all real, are they?
Yes, again, we separate sort of the inauthentic networks and our actions against spam and other types of similar behavior as separate. Yeah.
Okay, so
have I missed something? So there's more inauthentic accounts on X than there are authentic accounts.
Yeah, help us understand that. So there's 600 real people. There's 600 million real people that have got accounts. There's 800 million that have been removed. How many more not real are still on there?
So just to give you a sense, every single day there are billions of attempts to create accounts on X that we're able to thwart. Right? Their efforts every single day to create inauthentic networks of accounts. Right. And a lot of the actions that we take against spam and against platform manipulation occur before those accounts are even able to post anything. So our goal is to try and have interventions at all different levels of account creation and account lifespan, right? And then action accordingly. So I just want to separate our efforts to combat sort of manipulation of the platform and the creation of inauthentic accounts from the users that we see logging in every day and every month that are active on the platform and we have more information about.
Okay, so I accept your premise. So the 800 million are either people who are either fake accounts in the process of being created or ones that you have identified as being created. But of the remaining circa 600 million that are deemed to be active users, how confident is X that all of those are authentic accounts?
Again, we're quite confident, and I want to focus on the activity of trying to create these inauthentic accounts and all the interventions that we have in place to ensure that an account is authentic. So these are interventions all throughout the sort of account creation process that we're able to implement in order to make sure that these accounts, never post and aren't part of the public conversation.
Do you agree with the statistic, the academic research in 2024 that said that about 12% of active users on X were inauthentic accounts? Does that feel like an accurate number to you, or is it higher?
I'm not familiar with the research, but I'm happy to review it and come back to you.
Go on, John.
All three of you have told us about how active you are in seeking out and removing inauthentic accounts. Now, during the course of the inquiry, we've heard from governments that disinformation represents one of the greatest threats to democracies at the moment. We have talked to government institutions in France, in Moldova, in Estonia, and of course in the UK, who have all told us about how they are seeking to counter it. And we've heard from NGOs who are monitoring it. I have to say all of them have suggested to me that the platforms have not been wholly cooperative in trying to prevent it. And I note that all three of your companies are currently under investigation under the Digital Services Act by the European Commission for failing to provide the information that you should to regulators. So I just want to ask, to what extent do you think that is unfair? Or is there more that you can be doing working with governments and regulators to prevent what is a considerable threat to all Western and democratic governments? Who is going to go first? Ali, you're in the room, so
I'm happy to. So, I think just to be clear, so in terms of the DSA investigations that are ongoing with the Commission, that there are a number of them, but I think as it pertains to mis and disinformation, we're being incredibly cooperative, and I think that's been noted by the Commission, specifically in relation to the Romanian election, where there is an ongoing investigation. So I don't think it's a case of not providing relevant information. I think that they are assessing things in its entirety. I think your question was whether or not there's more that can be done overall. And one of my observations would be that whenever we identify and disrupt networks, whether or not that's through CIO or other aspects of our inauthentic activity, there is only so much that we're ever going to be able to see on platform. So one of the common things that we will see is a level of coordination that takes place off our platform, either using encrypted messaging services or other kinds of features, or indeed sometimes directly in real life or more traditional methods of communication as well. And the challenge for us as platforms is being able to use the signals that we have from our services to be able to identify that coordinated behavior, when if actually it's taking place off platform, we might only have the output behavioral signals from them rather than any evidence of the coordination itself. And so I definitely think that there are areas that could be strengthened in that respect. I think part of the challenge is ensuring that you bring all members of the value chain into the conversation. Sort of echoes something that we were talking about earlier, and the breadth of what we're talking about. We will commonly see, for example, people off-platforming to these encrypted messaging spaces where we have no idea what the conversation is that is ongoing, and may then be affecting and impacting what shows up on the platform. So I think that's one, and I think related to that, but perhaps
disinformation. We're essentially talking about content that is posted for public view. There's a separate issue around encrypted messaging. But
so on disinformation, again, I think that my point there is that we have policies in place on dis and misinformation that can assess it on the basis of the content that is posted. So we actually don't need to know who that person is or what their intent is. We simply judge it against our own community guidelines, and the threshold there is whether it has the potential for significant harm to an individual or to society. So coordination doesn't matter on that point. We don't allow mis or disinformation that has that potential harm. And as I say, we'll assess that on the basis of our own set of moderators making a call, our database of claims that has already been designated as mis and disinformation, or where we don't have that information, working with global fact checkers, which we continue to do. What I'm saying from a coordinated perspective, whereby the content itself may not be mis or disinformation. I think my colleague from Meta used a phrase earlier of just attempting to, kind of impact the confidence in public discourse as a whole. Where we see that level of activity, that's the area where I think both a greater level of the value chain being brought into the conversation, number one, and potentially government acting as more of a convener to be able to share and facilitate signals between platforms. There's an element that we're able to do for that under certain circumstances, but actually, kind of targeting and creating a situation where the information that we have, we're quite public about what we do, but the information that is gathered from all platforms is then kind of cross-referenced so that we all have as much to be armed with to be able to identify whether or not this activity is going on.
At the counter-disinformation centres that have been established now in a number of countries. Now, obviously I don't expect you just to instantly accept whatever they tell you to take down, but can you assure me that cooperation is close, that when they are bringing to your attention material which is disinformation, you are very rapidly looking at it and removing it where it's proven to be so?
So look, I can give you specific UK examples on this because obviously when we had the civil unrest in the UK in late 2024, we stood up exactly the kind of crisis response approach that I've been talking about for other things like Iran. We're there focused on whether or not there is harmful content on the platform that includes mis and disinformation that might have this harmful impact on society as a whole. And we took a range of signals at that point. We worked work closely with law enforcement to ensure that we had as many authoritative facts about what was actually happening on the ground, so that we could then work again with our fact checkers on checking the claims that were being made on some of the content that we saw to see whether or not it was in fact verifiable or not. During these kind of periods, we also, and this goes for elections and for fast-moving crisis events, we also make sure that we have search interstitials so that when people are looking for information about elections, about an ongoing crisis or something like that, they are pointed towards authoritative information, even if that means taking them off our platform and to law enforcement or the Electoral Commission in election instances. So, yeah, very, very standard to work closely with the sort of bodies that you're talking about, and something that we've done directly here in the UK.
Thank you. Mr. Fernandez, I mean, X, as I understand it, is looking at a very substantial fine from the European Commission as a result of breach of the DSA requirements. Are you working as closely as you could be with law enforcement and with regulatory bodies?
Yeah, so I obviously won't comment on the ongoing DSA matter, as that is a separate legal matter. What I can say is that we remain fully committed to compliance with the duties that are set out in the Online Safety Act in the UK, and we welcome sort of our continued engagement with Ofcom and working diligently as a priority towards the OSA deliverables that are in line with Ofcom's roadmap. And so that's our commitment, and our commitment is also to compliance with the DSA. And so I just, coming back to your question around disinformation, I think there are a couple of things I also wanted to highlight. We rolled out a feature late last year. We call it About This Account, that allows any user, these are for users that we've got enough signals to deem them authentic. We provide another layer of transparency about the account. So, when the account was created, where it was created, where the account is based in, and that is, somewhat fluid depending on travel, of course, how many handles, name changes they've had since the creation of account. And so this is a really exciting and really interesting surface that we'll continue to build on. We've seen a lot of interest from users and usage of that, and super important. And I think I want to note also our account verification, particularly for governments, which I think is unique to the marketplace, right? X is a place for digital diplomacy. It's where we go to understand when things are happening, and where world leaders and local leaders go to engage in the conversation and speak to their constituents. The gray checkmark uptake has been really significant and really encouraging to see across the world, and is, again, another signal of authenticity, that when folks come to X, they can see that this person is a representative of their government or a leader of their government. And I think that's really important to the public conversation and its integrity.
And just to repeat the question I put to Mr. Law, X is committed to working with government counter-disinformation bodies, and you will respond as quickly as you can when it's brought to your attention.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, we welcome intelligence on these networks, wherever it may come from, right? I think there are all sorts of stakeholders that contribute to open source intelligence and threat reporting. And so absolutely, if the UK government has signals of these coordinated networks, we certainly want to know about it.
Okay. And Mr. Agranovich, to what extent are you working with the bodies that are trying to prevent disinformation being spread?
We do work quite closely both with civil society partners, so open source research groups, disinformation research organizations, as well as kind of the counter disinformation centers. We were one of the early partners, for example, of the Center for Hybrid Warfare up in Finland. And so, yes, in addition to welcoming leads from those organizations, we also, where we can, share information about what we're seeing from those networks to help improve their own investigative capabilities. As both my colleagues mentioned, we always conduct independent investigations based on the leads that they share with us. And so if we do enforce, it's based on our own internal investigative work, but we welcome information from those organizations to help us find things we might not have found ourselves.
Okay, and finally, we have, in the next few months, 2 extremely important elections where there is a high risk of attempts to interfere, one in Hungary in, I think, about 3 weeks' time, and one in Armenia a little bit later. We know that both of those are likely to be subject to attempts to influence the election by Russia. To what extent are you active in trying to ensure that doesn't happen?
I'm happy to take this one first.
Yeah.
And so we are very focused on both of those elections. So the strategy for us here is, on one hand, we have kind of expert intelligence investigators whose job is to track known threat actor countries, Russia, China, Iran, and the like, consistently and continuously across our services. So they're going to keep doing the work that they were already doing, looking for those operations. We also will surge teams to look specifically at those elections with the goal of identifying and disrupting potential activity that might happen targeting those elections specifically. And then in addition to the teams that we have in the UK who work on these issues, we also have teams supporting those elections directly who are based in Europe and can provide kind of real-time, same time zone support if questions come up from governments or authorities in Europe or in the countries in question around those elections. We can respond more quickly.
And are you both doing the same?
Could I ask Mr. Fernandez, you don't have a British representative, but in Hungary and Armenia, do you have representatives of X in those countries? And if people about to face elections in Hungary or Armenia, which we all appreciate are pivotal, are seeing what they believe to be Russian disinformation, who would they report it to and how would they go about doing it?
So I can't share particular details of where our personnel are located. I mean, we obviously have an office in the UK. We have personnel in the UK. Understanding that we do have a colleague who's temporarily out of office, which I understand has been an inconvenience.
It's just honestly, we have really tried. We have tried. We've asked the other team. We've asked the department that's supposed to regulate you. Everyone is having some difficulty pinpointing an ex-member of staff currently working in the UK. But, never mind that. Can you assure us that you have ex-members of staff working in Hungary and Armenia where there are pivotal European elections happening sort of now?
Again, our teams across Europe work across all the European markets, and so we support those elections across the region. And so when those elections happen, we have an elections working group that convenes to again assess the different threat vectors for that election and prepare accordingly, depending on the volume of conversation, the number of users that we have, the contours of the narratives that we can expect, the level of threats that we expect from coordinated and authentic networks, and so that happens across elections across all over the world. So
these are elections
we're well
happening now.
Yes, and
so you're telling us there are teams active at the moment monitoring what is going out on your platform relating to the elections in Hungary and in Armenia.
Yeah, we monitor and prepare for and respond to elections all over the world throughout the year. It's an ongoing working group that works specifically on these issues, and it's a cross-functional group that involves members from all around the company. So we are well trained, well versed, well prepared for elections of all sizes across our different markets. We're obviously a global platform and very popular for elections-related discourse. So this is not new, though. Obviously, the threats always emerge and adapt.
It's one group, is it? It's an elections coordination group that you've got that monitors all elections across the world. Our
safety team is the one that's responsible for the enforcement of our rules and our terms of service. Right? We have for elections a group that coordinates across different elections to make sure that we're adequately prepared for each of those elections based on the different threat vectors that we see specifically on X. So what I would like, if you wouldn't mind, is if you could help us. If there are people who are concerned about what is happening in these two countries right now, because as Europeans we are very concerned about the elections in Hungary and Armenia and malign influence of Russia, how can people report those if they see it to X? If you could help us with how we go about
contacting them?
Yeah, for every EU country, as a part of the DSA, each country has a digital services coordinator, right? That digital services coordinator is, tasked with implementing the Digital Services Act and coordinating with platforms. There's also a list of sanctioned trusted flaggers that are approved by each of these digital services coordinators in each of the countries. Trusted flaggers have their own dedicated reporting channels to the platform. So I would just point you to the resources available made by the European Commission and the EU and the DSA, and how the digital service coordinators function within the EU.
Very quickly. So yes, we will for high-profile elections. You mentioned the Hungarian one, for example. My counterpart in Central Europe is working incredibly hard on that at the moment. We'll stand up local election integrity task force that are designed to sufficiently staff during that period of time. Again, both from a trust and safety perspective, so reviewing the content itself that is coming onto the platform, and continuous enforcement on the covert influence operation bit. The additional thing I suppose highlight would be our work with fact checkers, because that provides us with one additional input to assessing the veracity of what is being claimed on our platform, and we'll work with them to both test broad trends and narratives and then any specific aspects that are highlighted to us. I think we're perhaps a little bit different in our origin from my fellow panelists, in as much as TikTok started very much as an entertainment platform. I think over a period of time, as our user base has grown, we've seen a great deal more political discourse, and so we want to ensure that it's an environment where everybody can engage in that if that is their interest. And what we have therefore seen in the last few years is a greater number of political stakeholders, governments, departments, including the UK government, the UK Prime Minister, coming onto the platform as well. So we want to make sure that we will preserve the ability for this to be used as a communications tool by people participating in this process, as well as our users expressing their opinions. We encourage candidates to apply for verified account badges. That's something that they can't purchase. It's something that it indicates the account belongs to who it does. I certainly think if we're thinking about lessons learned, there's probably something that lots of governments could and parties could think about standardising how they communicate with platforms at the start of an electoral period. Because actually what you will commonly find is that there's a real range of candidates, lots of them will have a social media presence, and actually being in a position where the parties themselves are able to say, here are our candidates, here are their account handles, that will help us instantaneously be able to verify them and label them accordingly on our systems, and at the same time take action against anybody who is trying to impersonate. We will do that anyway, but obviously it will necessarily be using our own initiative and understanding rather than being able to get confirmation directly from political parties.
You think that's a good idea, X and Meta? Meta seems to be nodding, so just for the record, Meta agrees. What about X? Do you think we should provide a list of candidates so that you can stop people impersonating us?
Certainly around elections, I think impersonation is one of the largest areas of policy violations, whether it's accounts that are compromised because they don't have good security practices, or impersonating accounts. That's something that we see a spike in around election time. So certainly it would be helpful.
Chi.
Thank you very much, Chair, and it's a great pleasure to be guesting here from the Science, Innovation and Technology Select Committee. And yes, so Wilfredo, you gave evidence to us a year ago, and you are going to be giving evidence to our updated session on the inquiry into social media and algorithms on the 24th, I think it is, of March. I won't go back over it, but I did. My committee did share Emily Thornberry's experience in trying to identify somebody who was responsible, unsuccessful experience in trying to identify someone who was responsible for X in the UK. But I wanted to ask about algorithms. My committee's inquiry spent some time looking at social media algorithms and harm and online harm. And so perhaps, and and raised a number of questions and issues around how algorithmic manipulation and bias is identified by platforms, is addressed, and is information about that is shared. So perhaps I can ask each of you just to say, how do your ranking in recommendation systems assess and mitigate the risk that disinformation is amplified by the algorithm because it is highly engaging? How do you address bias in the algorithm itself? And equally, how do you manage the risk of over-moderation when it comes to legitimate political speech? And I will start with you, Ms. Ali Law.
Yes, very happy to. So I think worth just spending a moment talking about the way that TikTok operates in this respect. So TikTok, we operate on what we call a content graph, not a social graph. And what that means is if you're a TikTok user, you don't have to follow anyone. You will land on the For You page, and the For You page is populated with videos that, based on your behavior and your preferences, we believe that you will like. Now, when you first sign up to TikTok, it's populated by a series of videos that are just very popular across the TikTok environment as a whole. And say you like videos 1, 3, 7, and 8, it will take that information because you watched it or liked it or commented on it. It will cluster it along with other users that like those same videos, and then it will identify other videos that those users liked and serve up a selection to you. So the algorithm itself is comparatively content agnostic in the way that it operates, and it reacts to the signals that you give it rather than saying it specifically knows a particular type of content that you like. The other, I think, important aspect is that you were asking about disinformation and getting amplified in some way. That falls under the content moderation approach that we have, which, as I explained earlier, involves ensuring that every video that is uploaded to TikTok is scrutinized at source by automated tools before it hits the platform, assessing against our community guidelines. Either it has the confidence to be able to say, no, that is violative of our community guidelines, or it might pass it to human moderation team, and in the case of mis and disinformation, we may work with fact checkers and the global database that I talked about. So the process that we go through should ensure, and with the amount of stats that I gave earlier, 90% of misinformation, 0 views, 95% taken down within 2 hours. Having said that, of course, there may be edge cases or cases where you may miss something. One of the things that we do from a TikTok perspective is we re-moderate on the basis of a piece of content getting a greater level of engagement. So if the content sits on the platform and is not being watched, but if it then hits 1,000 views, 10,000 views, 100,000 views, we will pass it through the moderation process again to ensure that we are applying the community guidelines against it and taking action where appropriate. I then think that you were sort of asking about the kind of idea of biasing as well. So from our perspective, we want to try and ensure, as I say, that people have an experience that delights and surprises and engages them. The kind of content agnostic element of our algorithm really helps that. But the other thing that we make sure that we do is we try and ensure that we have appropriate dispersal, so that when somebody is watching a series of content, they don't just get served up dog videos because they've engaged with a few of them. We show them a real variety of different things. We have submitted various audits under the DMA of our recommender system to the European Commission. We have a researcher API that people are able to use to interrogate the trends that they see on our platform, and we work very hard to ensure that the algorithm accurately reflects the preferences that our users have, because ultimately that's how they get an authentic and engaged experience.
Well, thank you very much for that. But just so I understand it correctly, because one of the issues that came up in our inquiry was that inaccurate information about the attacker in the horrendous Southport murders case was put in the For You part of TikTok, and thus drove misinformation about who the attacker was. Now, is what you're saying to me that wouldn't happen now because it would be identified and taken down immediately, because that level of misinformation was a consequence of how quickly it went out? Are you saying that it wouldn't happen now? Is that what you're saying, or are you saying that it's not? it's not an issue for other reasons. Because I'm a bit confused as to why the way in which your algorithm works is relevant to misinformation and disinformation, because these can travel very quickly, whether you're dependent on content or not.
So in the specific example that you gave that we discussed last year,
yes.
The false name of the attacker was something that on TikTok showed up in the suggested search box. So this is where you go and search about a particular issue and it might autocomplete with some suggested terms. As I think I said to your committee, that was something that I think we regretted not moving as fast as we would have liked to have done on that issue. Our focus at the time, and I think this reflects the way that we respond to any kind of crisis that we see, our focus at the time is to focus on the short form video content that we know does land on people's For You page, so the information that they're seeing, and make sure that there is no harm that can arise from that, including mis and disinformation. So I don't think it was short form video that was percolating. I think that it was in the suggested search aspect. When we are responding to these crises, this goes back to the point that I was talking about earlier. The need for accurate and up-to-date verified information is obviously of the utmost importance. Now, the way that we work with fact checkers is to ensure that when there is a claim...
I just want to, don't interrupt you, but you have talked about that already. What I'm asking about now is, these things happen very quickly. How does the algorithm make it more likely? Does the algorithm make it more likely that engaging content will be amplified before perhaps your fact checkers had been able to check their facts?
So when we refer something to our fact checkers, we take it out of the For You feed, so it's not available as part of the thing that people will scroll on. And when it's under verification, it will still be available on the platform. We talked a little bit, and I think your final question was about kind of that balance. So we don't want to be in a situation where if these are legitimate claims or claims of opinion, we are completely and totally removing them. But we do take it out of the For You feed, and therefore out of the place where people can just sort of stumble upon it. We'll refer it to fact checkers. They'll come back with either verifying it.
I think you've gone through the process a few times. I just don't think you're addressing the point of whether more engaging content is more likely to be amplified.
So look, our algorithm absolutely presents people with information that they will, with content that they will find engaging. But I think what I'm trying to say is that with the moderation process that we have, with our use of fact checkers, with some of the levers that we have that involve taking it out of the For You feed, we aim to insulate against the ability for mis and disinformation to rapidly spread and to get significant numbers of views.
Mike, did I miss it? How does it go before the fact checkers?
We refer it. So it'll either be on the basis of a claim that we will look at under our misinformation community guideline. And as I say, that is whether or not this misinformation might have the potential for significant harm to an individual or society. So there may be a claim that somebody is making that we directly assess, or from people reporting to us, and that can involve users themselves, or indeed, similar to colleagues, a number of kind of trusted partners and flaggers. The first bit, as I say, is checking against a database of known conspiracy, and those are the sort of things that we will commonly be able to prevent even being uploaded in the first instance.
This takes time. It takes time.
Yes, although, as I say, 95% of misinformation posts were removed within 2 hours, and during periods of time.
Yes, the 5% can be significant. Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Fernandez.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and I look forward to diving deeper into this topic in a matter of weeks. Following up on our conversation a little over a year ago, we've since made significant updates to our For You recommendation algorithm, and we've published the code for that as of last month. So you can go to GitHub and go, dive into the code base and the architecture of our recommendation algorithm for yourself and provide feedback. That's something we'll continue to update as we update the algorithm. So we're proud to be that transparent and look forward to the input of the global sort of developer community and user community on the algorithm. You may have also seen it's not available yet in the UK, but in the US, Canada, and throughout currently in the Middle East, we've provided the opportunity for people to have their own filters on the For You recommendation tab. So you'll tap the For You icon, and you'll be able to filter based on topic and have a feed that's solely that topic. So you can have a feed that's solely about gaming, that's solely about business and finance, science, technology, the entertainment, and the arts. And so that's a way to give users a lot more control over their feeds. And so we're really excited about the feedback that we're getting, and excited to roll that out to more markets. We think it's a great way of offering algorithmic choice. And of course, that's in addition to the choice that they already have between For You and following, and creating their own custom feed using lists.
You said that you've published your some of the code around your algorithm. Do you test the algorithm to see if there is potential bias in the ranking of content?
Yeah, so as you'll see from our model, it's not based on specific content. It's based on the user and what we think is going to be relevant to the user. So that may be, different for everyone. So it's not based on, a specific
I understand
type of content that we've determined.
Do you test to see if someone is more likely to receive content from certain political parties or origins, etc.? Do you do any testing like that for bias?
Yes, of course. We want users to be able to see a spectrum of types of content, right? X is a place where we see robust debate on any particular issue.
Do you test for political bias?
I'm a part of the engineering team, so I can't speak specifically to their tests and experiments, but certainly we want people to come to X to seek the truth, to engage in an interesting discourse and debate, and to see all sides and all spectrums of a particular argument or issue. So that sort of objective truth-seeking mission is what we're all about.
You think that those people who say that X has the most appalling right-wing bias these days are being unfair on you?
I can speak for what I see on my For You page, which is at this point heavily trained for over 17 years of usage. But I see all sides of a particular debate, whether that's a debate on a particular entertainment issue or politics of the day. I truly do think we are a global town square in that regard, and sometimes the local pub where a lot of banter and discussion happens. And so I do see.
You don't think that your pub is full of Reform
sides.
voters, and particularly Reform members of Parliament, whose tweets do seem to be amplified more than other members of Parliament who perhaps have many more followers? I don't want to be bitter about this, but it does seem, when you look at a newly elected member of the Reform Party becomes an MP, that any utterance of theirs seems to go spread around the United Kingdom with extraordinary alacrity and in front of a very large number of eyeballs. You don't think that's anything to do with your algorithm?
I think X is certainly a place for politics, and certainly there's a fervent user base in the UK across all the political spectrum. So I think it's really interesting to get your perspective on that.
You've never heard this before?
There is.
I've certainly heard that there's a heavy amount of political content across all the political spectrum, that's for sure.
There is published research on this, Mr. Flanders. In Nature magazine in January, they did a study of the For You page, I think it was, that said it pushes political opinion in a more conservative direction. It was influencing more conservative perceptions of the criminal investigations against Trump, more conservative views on the war in Ukraine, and the algorithm led users to follow more conservative activist accounts than it would otherwise. Okay. I mean, there's public research Certainly, I'm
Sure,
I'm a
yeah.
left-wing politician. When I go on the For You page, I get a lot of far-right American content on my page.
Yeah, I think
Are you
whether-
denying the research? What's
No,
X's
I
position?
think that research was based on data from about 3 years ago, so it's not really relevant to the algorithm that you're experiencing today.
Well, our
And I think
experience ought to be that X is much more even-handed and indeed left-wing than it was 3 years ago. Is that the information you're putting before this committee today?
I think we'd welcome fresh research and study, and I think query whether whether a particular user wants to be in a particular echo chamber, or whether they want to see perhaps opinions of folks they may not agree with. And I think that sort of balance is important to the public discourse.
I think the balance is the problem, because you're presenting people with views from one particular direction that they don't agree with, but maybe not views from the other direction. Certainly in all of our experiences and according to the research, and I'm sure this is not just a UK problem, it's an international problem that's pushing the Overton window, if you want to say, in a particular direction.
Yeah, so is it your contention that you're not seeing content that is aligned with your particular political party or political views?
I do when I'm following the pages that I follow, but when I automatically get bumped to the other page, I get a lot of far-right American Christian conservative content forwarded to me, which I'm happy to see a wide variety of views, but I don't get far-left content, for example, that's shared.
Sure, and if there is content that you're not interested in, I encourage you to hit those 3 dots on the top right.
It's a bit less about my particular feed than the systematic issues that we're talking about here.
Sure, but what I'm pointing to is a product feature that allows users to provide feedback to the system about content that they're not interested in. So when you hit those 3 dots, you can say, I'm not interested in this post, and either the content, and you can select that the content is either not relevant or that you'd like to see fewer posts from this account. And that helps the algorithm sort of reinforce what your preferences are.
That seems to be an underlying acceptance of the fact that the algorithm is pushing the content, because what you're saying is that it is a requirement of the user to correct that stream by actively moving it in a different direction. So the starting premise of what you're suggesting is that it is in fact pushing far-right content, and it is therefore on me as a user, as my responsibility. If I log onto the account, I have to accept that premise, and I have to act actively in order to change the direction of the algorithm.
No, that is not the premise that I'm accepting or the contention that I'm making. What I'm saying is that there's any piece of content that you're not interested in, you have a mechanism to provide feedback so that the system can better understand what your preferences are. And again, we provide as much user choice as we can, and we understand that the algorithm, and I think our leadership has been very clear, we publish it not because necessarily that we're extremely proud, but because we want the tough user feedback, which obviously we're getting now, and we continue to get every single day on the platform, right? We are a platform that operates in the public, and we get user feedback very directly, and we hear that user feedback. We know we want to improve our recommendations. We want to provide more choice. That's why we're experimenting with these timeline filters so that you can see, if you don't want to see anything about politics in your For You feed, you can simply toggle that off and just focus on gaming or any other interest that you may have, right? Ultimately, we want to provide as much choice as possible. And we want to, of course, provide you content that you want to see and enjoy seeing and enjoy engaging with and want to share with other people in your life, and that ultimately are entertained by. And that's our mission. We want X to be a place that's wholly relevant to why you visit, right? You want to understand what's happening in the world. And so we're going to continue to endeavor to make that easier for you, simpler, and give you more control as a user into what's in that For You, while also giving you the choice to simply have a very straightforward feed of the accounts you wish to follow. And an underutilized feature are lists, which you can pin to your timeline. Then you can create tons of custom timelines just based on certain accounts or certain topics that you want to create. and those are ones that you can easily swipe to and from. So that's an underutilized feature of the lists on X.
Yes, just two quick questions to follow up that. I think it is unrealistic to expect that hundreds of millions of individuals will all try to reverse engineer the algorithm in order to rid it of what biases there may be there. But can you just say, do you test for bias, and is it possible for others, outside parties, researchers, etc., to have APIs into the algorithm so that they can demonstrate whether there is bias or not?
Yeah, certainly. They can go to developer.x.com and sign up for a developer account. We've just overhauled the system so that it's pay per use, and I think
pay per use. You have
Correct.
To pay for it. You have to pay in order to test.
Well, there are certain, to conduct certain research, you may need to have certain access. Obviously, there's different research programs in other jurisdictions that facilitate that access. But for researchers all around the world, as has always been the case, they have the ability to use our developer console to conduct research at a very reasonable rate.
I think one of the things that my committee called for was greater transparency and access to the algorithm. Can you do, and just finally, you do accept that if there were political bias in X's algorithm, that would represent support for a political party or a political movement, which would be an interference in our electoral process?
Yeah. Our goal is to seek the truth, and for users on X to be able to seek the truth, and for the algorithm to be as objective as possible. And so that's the endeavor that we'll continue on.
I'll say that as a kind of yes.
And again, we are the only platform to publish our recommendation algorithm. So we welcome the study and scrutiny of it. Community Notes is completely open, transparent, public. Every data point is available to researchers to study misleading information, and the technology that powers it is completely open source. So, as far as making our technology transparent, we're trying our best to do so.
Can I ask you about the Twitter Moderation Research Consortium, which I think was the way in which academics could get access to the algorithm, but obviously with the change of ownership, that was closed down. Don't you regret not having a more easy and open access to your algorithm, given, I'm sure, that the criticisms you've heard this afternoon are not the first time you've heard them?
I think access is easier and more open than ever to developer tools and the API for researchers to study. I think research all around the world relies on certain tools that researchers have to procure, and that access to X's API is reasonable and comparable in that regard to other, commercially available survey tools and such. In terms of researching misleading information and the efficacy of community notes, there is no cost to that. That data is updated daily. We have researchers all around the world that are downloading that data every single day. We have researchers that are experimenting with AI community note writing, which is really exciting. So I think we have, in terms of disinformation and misleading information, we have one of the richest treasure troves that has no cost to it, and that is the community notes database.
Can I ask you specifically about deep fakes, where people's personalities, their image or their voice are used without their permission to propagate a message? Now, we heard that during an election that potentially is an offence, and the Electoral Commissioner talked about it. However, I met somebody to whom this happened last week who had been trying to get it removed. She was told that she had to prove it wasn't her, and it was incredibly difficult, and the resistance from the platforms to tackling this. Now, as I understand it, under the Online Safety Act, there is a new offence being created called false communication. and that platforms are also liable if they are disseminating what is provably false. So to what extent are you taking account of the new provision of the Online Safety Act and acting against what is plainly false information, and in particular deep fakes?
You can ask. You ask.
Who's going to start?
I can go first. By
Or
all means. Yeah. So
you were unfortunate in being the one person in a room. So
no, very happy to be so.
Okay.
Look, I think from our perspective, the Online Safety Act itself is something that we obviously comply with. We've been regulated by Ofcom since 2020 under a previous regime, the VSP regime. But new laws or new obligations don't change the approach that we've taken already on this issue. So the first thing is, anything that is violative in our community guidelines is violative whether it is AI or not. So we always assess it on the content in and of itself first. When it comes to AI and synthetic media, we don't prohibit deepfakes of private individuals without their consent, and of public individuals if they are endorsing a commercial product or endorsing a political stance.
You do or you don't allow?
Don't allow.
You don't allow private individuals to be deepfaked?
Without their consent.
Without their consent.
Or public figures if they are endorsing a product or endorsing a political stance as well. Now, obviously, the sophistication of AI is increasing. I think that has huge potential creative upsides for creators, but it also means that we have to reflect that challenge in the way that we approach enforcement. We do a number of things. We were one of the I think we were the first video sharing platform to implement the C2PA provenance code. So that's where you take metadata from where an AI clip is generated. It is read by the platform and it will automatically label AI. So we have to ensure that anything that is created from an AI perspective is labeled. Again, that's part of our community service, community guidelines, sorry. We also have continued to iterate our approach, and one of the things that we announced towards the tail end of last year that we're now doing is invisible watermarking, so that if there's a piece of AI that has been created, it might not have an overt watermark, but it'll have an invisible one that nevertheless can be read by our systems. I think we've labelled more than 1.3 billion pieces of AI content on TikTok thus far. So it's something that we're acutely aware of, as you say, particularly during an election period where kind of misinformation could be enhanced by the application of AI. But it's something that we have tools both from a community guidelines perspective and from a wider content moderation perspective to deal with.
And
in John's worked example, though, let's assume that the system isn't 100% perfect and content has got through. How does an individual have to prove that it's not them, or is it enough for them simply to go, that is AI, that is a lie, that's not what I said? To get something
if the content wasn't labelled as AI, that in and of itself is then not in adherence with our community guidelines. And then if you're talking about a private individual, then we have privacy routes through that would be the same about kind of content that was produced without your consent more generally, that people can avail themselves on our platform.
But if there was a video that was going to go up and was going to, I don't know, accuse, let's say, Sir John of suddenly becoming a Labour supporter.
My colleague George Freeman, a video went up saying he defected to Reform, and he was very upset about it.
Yes.
That's an example of something that would breach our policies because it's a deepfake of a public persona making a political claim that is not what they made.
And it should have been able to go down straight away.
Yeah, I think that comes to some of the points that we were talking about earlier, which is obviously you then need to build in, and we do it in part with fact checkers and in part with our own trust and safety team, including misinformation specialists, the ability to assess some of these claims directly. Clearly, you still want to make space for satirical content or, kind of similar things like that. So there is a level of balance, but we adopt a kind of precautionary approach, particularly during election periods of times.
And can I ask the other two platforms what your approach to this is? Mr. Agranovich, we'll start with.
Yes, thanks for the question. I'd echo a lot of what my colleague from TikTok said. I think we have relatively similar approaches to the issue of AI-generated content. We also provide labeling of AI-generated content, and we do that in part by implementing C2PA, again, that metadata that's embedded within AI-generated video or AI-generated photos. One of the challenges I'd call out, though, is That approach is not without challenges. It is at times very difficult to determine whether content was created with an AI tool. C2PA is not implemented by every AI company. And so some, particularly smaller commercially available AI content generators, don't have that metadata embedded. And so while we do endeavor to do our own detection to try and identify if a video or a photo may have been created with AI, absent that underlying metadata, there will be some level of inaccuracy. I think that's something we're constantly trying to close. But to be fully transparent, I think is a challenge across the industry at the moment. It's something we certainly would encourage AI companies that produce content, particularly videos and photos, to kind of voluntarily join that C2PA kind of coalition to implement within their own products. And so, yes, this is something I think we are continuing to work to get better at, and I'd echo many of the approaches that TikTok had mentioned.
Just on that, I mean, the particular person I was talking to is quite a well-known musician. She has had literally hundreds of accounts created which are in her name, using her image, but for which she has had no involvement whatsoever. And she's literally having to spend hours every day trying to get them taken down, and as soon as she does, more are being created. Now, is it that the responsibility is for her, or can you proactively put a flag saying, you know, this is somebody who is suffering from this, and therefore we are not going to accept these accounts being created?
Yeah, so the first thing I should say is I'm very sorry to your friend for that she's having to deal with this. I know from experience how frustrating it can be. It should not, it's first off, I should say, it is our responsibility as a platform to take impersonation seriously, whether that impersonation is to enable misinformation or disinformation, or to enable scams or spam. There are a number of tools that we've launched in the last year that are designed to get better at particularly celebrity impersonation, which we've seen be used by scammers to try and scam people out of their money. And so the short answer is yes, there are programs that we can put in place to try and do more of that proactive detection. There are also some steps that we can suggest to people who are the target of impersonation that can make our automated systems more effective if they take a few certain steps with their own accounts. And to the point of your friend in particular, we do have a team based in London. Certainly, we'd be happy to follow up on ways that we might be able to address that particular case.
Well, I'd be gratefully well. I mean, she came to talk to a group of us as members of Parliament to express her frustration that this was happening and that she'd been unable to tackle it. So I will certainly put you in touch. Mr. Fernandez.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly. I'd welcome more details if you're...
Not specifically about her, but what is X doing to prevent individuals having their personality used without their consent, potentially on a massive scale?
Yeah, well, firstly, we have a clear policy on authenticity, right? So deceptive identities and trying to create deceptive personas is against our rules. And so similar to the other platforms, we have programs in place to help address that at scale. I mentioned before, we see that often in times of elections, the attempted impersonation of candidates or public figures or members of elected office. We also have our synthetic and manipulated media policy, which sort of addresses it at just a content level. And finally, we have community notes, again, which addresses potentially misleading information at the content level. But I think what you're talking about is the authenticity of the account, and similar to other platforms, we have ways of scaling enforcement there, just depending on the individual case.
I mean, respectfully, Mr. Fernandez, by embedding Grok into X, and the UK basically had to threaten legislative action to get X to stop allowing Grok to produce sexualized images of women and children, with no attempt to moderate by X at all. I mean, you talk about being a marketplace for ideas, but that is peddling paedophilic images for profit. So I don't really nothing about your answer to Sir John suggests to me that there is a robust process in hand here to prevent the use of AI to move misinformation, unless you want to correct me in some way.
So we've implemented a whole host of measures to ensure that that incident does not occur again. We agree that it was unacceptable, and have been working diligently since that incident to ensure our systems has the most robust guardrails available to ensure that doesn't happen again. So our teams have learned a lot from that episode, and
there was another
we look
scandal
forward-
that broke this morning in relation to Grok, which was AI being used to generate the most appalling and offensive messages to Hillsborough victims. That happened today.
I understand there were some unacceptable generated responses, and we actioned those posts in accordance with our policies, and our engineering teams are investigating the issue to ensure that that doesn't happen again.
Could I ask a question about the Online Safety Act, and in particular the National Security Act, which seems to be bolted on to the Online Safety Act, and enforces an offence in relation to foreign interference. I wonder how much any of you three perhaps have come across this, and whether you have been asked through this legislation to take down any particular posts. I wonder perhaps if I begin with Meta.
So at Meta, we certainly, I think, believe that the principles and duties established in the Online Safety Act provide a strong foundation for addressing a number of different content risks, including state-sponsored disinformation being treated as a priority illegal content. I would say here, personally, I'm not familiar with any individual pieces of content that we've had to take down based on those requests, but can follow up with our teams and follow up with the committee afterwards on whether that might be the case. That said, I would say it is also a priority for us to identify and remove particularly foreign origin disinformation operations, targeting elections in the UK as well as elections around the world. And that's work that we will do whether or not we're required to do so under specific regulation.
Thank you. Mr. Fernandez, are you aware of
Yeah.
the National Security Act, which works in conjunction with the Online Safety Act to deal with foreign international interference?
Yeah, so I'm not aware of any particular case, but happy to take it back to my team. Obviously, we are fully committed to compliance with the OSA and all laws in the UK. And so that's certainly our charge, but happy to look into whether there's been any specific case in which that's been invoked.
Thank you. You were about the foreign interference offence under the National Security Act.
So it's included within the OSA under the illegal harms part of the OSA. And
well done, bingo, give the boy a gold star.
Thank you, Chair. But therefore, I think the consequence of it means that the set of steps that I've set out today that we do around covert influence operation and other aspects is included in the risk assessments that we then submit to Ofcom under that part of the code.
It's just that there's quite a lot that people don't seem to know about it, apart from yourself. And when we're assessing whether or not the legislation is particularly effective, the fact that representatives of social media companies don't exactly have it at the tip of their fingers, although you do, it perhaps it's important by itself. We have a few other questions about the monetization of disinformation, and I wonder if we could. I know it's getting a little late, but can we perhaps finish the other subjects? Do you mind, Edward, if I go to you?
I suppose I won't repeat all of the allegations against social media companies, but obviously the underlying issue when it comes to disinformation and misinformation, and I guess I separate off from inauthentic coordinated behaviour, and actually just the fact that social media platforms to society, to the public, feel like they are cesspools of misinformation and disinformation. The inherent problem is that you're an engagement-driven business, right? Which means eyeballs and getting people to engage in the content and share it and engage with it. So I mean, how do you how do you offset that? I mean, you are making money in many cases through the engagement, and a lot of this engagement is misinformation and disinformation. So, I mean, we'll quickly go around, but if you want to start, Mr. Granovich, you know, how much money do you estimate Meta is making from a business model where, you know, what percentage of the revenue stream is from engagement with misinformation and disinformation or patently false information, even if it meets all of your guidelines?
So off the top of my head, I don't have a specific number, but we do report on the amount of money that we assess these influence operations networks spend in attempting to, for example, buy ads to drive content that they're pushing on our platforms. That number is often very small. By very small, I mean, you know, a couple $100 here and there. I would also say that is not revenue that we want. Specific to how misinformation or even just highly polarizing content kind of meshes with our business model. Facebook is designed, Facebook, Instagram, our services are platforms where we want people to be able to build authentic communities. People don't want to be in an authentic community if they can't trust the people that they are in community with, or if they feel that they're being targeted by malicious actors trying to abuse those communities. And so disinformation networks, or even just the spammers and scammers of the world, they run counter to the core assumption that makes our business model work. It's one of the reasons why we take this problem so seriously.
Right. Mr. Lord, do you
Separately,
have a number?
advertisers don't. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Mr. Iranovich, we're running out of time here, and I've got to give everyone a chance to answer. Mr. Lord, do you think you have a revenue number?
So we don't allow political advertising at all. So we're not taking any money for political boosting of political content or anything like that.
The question is of whether or not misinformation or disinformation meets your guidelines, and therefore goes on to, obviously the business model is getting engagement, selling advertising, whatever it might be, getting people to use and be. So if you looked at your annual revenue globally, what percentage of it realistically is driven from or as a result of engagement with misinformation and disinformation, even if it meets your guidelines?
So I think if it doesn't meet our guidelines, then it's prohibited. If it meets our guidelines, then we haven't termed it as mis and disinformation. From a business model perspective, we're also slightly different, again, to some of our competitors, in as much as we don't monetize against particular videos. The adverts that you will see are in the middle of pre-rolls. Yeah. So when you are going through the For You feed, it's not just a case of the higher the number of individual videos that are seen, the greater the revenue that we are getting. That's not what it is. And if you go through the For You feed, you will commonly see videos that have received less than 300 views and very few likes, because we're trying to create an environment where people explore variety of content, different types of things that they're inspired by or surprised by. Similar to my colleague at Meta, we want people to have a good experience. Now, I've given the figures on what we take down in relation to misinformation.
Sorry, again, I'm going to interrupt you because I'm going to give Mr. Fernandez a chance to say.
Sure. Any post that receives a community note cannot be monetized. I don't have a specific figure on the question that you asked.
All right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Richard.
Last question from me, and it relates to extremist content being promoted by Daesh. We see sometimes that synthetic content is being developed, synthetic audio, synthetic images, and synthetic text. Could you let us know how you're adapting your content moderation to take account of this AI-generated extremist content, please? Start with you, Mr.
Yeah, I'm happy to go first on that. So kind of goes to the previous point I was mentioning. Community guidelines apply whether it's AI generated and synthetic or not. We don't allow hateful ideologies or incitement posts or anything, and if there are specific signals, signs, audio that is associated with hateful ideology in that way, we will add that to a bank. That means that we can actually pre-screen on upload anything that comes through. So if there is an example of a piece of content that's been identified as breaching our community guidelines, we don't just take it down, we will then add the kind of key elements to that to the models that are applied to them, and then whether it's a prohibited signal or sign or something like that, block them on upload.
Thank you. Mr. Agranovich?
In the interest of brevity, our approach is almost exactly the same. Two things I'd add. The first is we also don't allow hateful iconography. And so if, for example, synthetic content was produced on behalf of Daesh, but included specific symbology that they would use in their content, that would also be enough for us to enforce, again, whether it's AI or not AI generated. The second point is we also share that signal, the banking signal, with other parts of the industry through the Global Internet Forum for Countering Terrorism, GIFCT. And so we both receive signal, including, I believe, from TikTok, and then share that signal. So if we were to detect content, everybody else could also block it.
Fernandez.
Yes, and similar to the other companies in approach, and if you do have any examples of this particular content on X, I'd welcome it so our teams can further investigate, as I'm not aware of that sort of activity at the moment.
If I may, just quickly, I'm grateful for my colleague from Meta for adding two other elements that also apply to TikTok as well. We became members of GIFCT, I think, late last year. It does bring me to one of the things that I wanted to make to this committee today, which is, along with the recommendations that you're considering around, kind of the wider set of value chain, I think from a TikTok perspective, we're very keen to have continued and greater involvement in these sorts of conversations. We unfortunately weren't invited to be part of the Defending Democracy task force that UK government has previously run. Similarly, we still face restrictions on the parliamentary estate, despite the fact that the UK government itself is on TikTok, and that the TikTok device approach is exactly the same and commensurate as our other competitors under the UK mobile device management policy. So from our perspective, we have a great desire to be further involved in conversations, and we'll welcome any assistance that the committee can give on that front.
Thank you. And I thank all three of you for giving us the huge amount of time you have today. It's been quite an intense 2 hours. We have learned a great deal, and we're very grateful to you for giving your time. If you don't mind, we are likely to go through the transcript, and where you have said you will get back to us on things, I may write to you and ask you specifically if you could give us the additional information, perhaps beginning with Mr. Fernandez with who it is we talk to in Britain. But thank you all very much indeed. Thank you for your time. Order.
I went over to the normal one.
They're front of the big four,
4:30 start on schedule. Just a reminder, put your microphones behind the blue signs, please. Thank you. Phones.
Afternoon, everyone. Welcome to St James's Park ahead of tomorrow's match with Barcelona. If you have a question, please raise your hand and we'll get as many as we can in the next 15 minutes, and then you'll be joined by Lewis Hall. We'll start with Luke Edwards, please.
You described this as the biggest game in Newcastle's history. Is that a mental approach that you want everybody associated, your players, your staff, and the supporters to have tomorrow night?
Yeah, it is. Recent history, I don't know. Someone could trip me up. Going way back, I'm sure they will. But I think recent history, for me it is, and I think, yeah, that's very much the mentality we need. I think rising to the occasion, embracing the size of the game, I think these are things that have helped us this season, and we're looking for the same again.
Do you enjoy that sort of underdog role, kind of punching above your weight, is where that's tended to bring out the best in you in the 4 years you've been in?
Well, I'm not playing, so... but yeah, I know what you mean. I think the underdog role, to a degree, in my time here, has helped us at times. When we've been in that position where we feel sort of the odds are stacked against us, and we're going to need to use every psychological tool that we can to help us in this game, because it's undeniable we're playing a very, very good team. An outstandingly well-coached team, I have to say as well, from having watched them thoroughly in both games, preparing for them as we have done. They're a top team.
Thank you. Keith Downey?
An unusual situation is when
Yeah, quite a lot, Keith. I think when you go through that experience, as we've said lots of times before, when you're playing the very best teams, I think you take a little bit of that game with you going forward, because I think there's so much to take from that. I thought that they played well, we played well, especially for the first half of the game. I thought we were right in it, swung on sort of big moments in front of goal. They took theirs, we didn't take ours. But I think we take a lot of confidence from our performance for the majority of the game, and obviously take little bits away from what we needed to improve. Obviously Marcus Rashford scored 2 great goals on the night for them, and we just switched off for a second and they punished us.
What would be a positive result for you? Do you feel you need to take something there to have a chance of going through such a difficult place to play?
Well, I think they proved very recently against Atletico Madrid that probably the game's not going to be dead regardless of the outcome in this game. I think for us, we just have to focus on trying to win. I think you can't overthink it. Having watched both of those games, it was really intriguing. Obviously had a big deficit to try and claw back, and they nearly got there. It was 2 really good games against Atletico, and again, I think their recent record on the league, they've been very consistent. Their style of play is consistent, so I think we know what we're going to face.
Nisha Joshi.
Hi Eddie. Tino Livramento has been a big absence this season. He's getting back to fitness. Is he fit enough to be in contention to start?
He probably hasn't done enough training for me to feel 100% confident that he's in that best physical moment, especially for such a big game to start. But he's in our squad, and anyone who's in that position obviously is in contention to play. So it's a delicate balance with Tino at the moment. He trained again this morning, obviously trained again on Friday, and is in good spirits and is in a good place. He's a massive player for us. It's great to have him back. But obviously I've got to try and get the team selection right.
And how do you balance wanting to take an advantage to that second leg with staying in the tie in the 2-leg semi-final against Manchester City? Conceding the second goal so late was a real killer. How do you balance it?
Yeah, hopefully we can learn lessons from that tie. Yeah, we would just want to win the game, and I think that's in our thoughts. But of course, there's another game to come, so you don't want to do anything foolish that can impact your chances of trying to get through. And ultimately, that's the aim, regardless of this game, the away game. Trying to get through is obviously the objective.
Thank you. Lee Ryder, then Craig Hall, please.
Eddie, going into this game, there's obviously good memories of the PSG game when you started so well in that game, getting in crunch tackles early on. Are you going to have to do something similar in this game to set the tone from the very start?
Yeah, a good start I think is really important. But as you saw against Manchester City at the weekend, it's not the be-all and end-all. Of course, you want to set the authority in the game. You want to show your opponent that you mean business, but we have to carry that through for the whole game. We have to be there at the end just as much as we are at the beginning. So I think we've had some great recent experiences to help us for the 2-legged game. I think all our Champions League games have been a great dress rehearsal for this moment, and I think that's how we have to look at it. Now is the moment where we need to be at our very best.
At times against Man City, it was very difficult to actually get the ball off them. How do you stop them dictating Barca going into this one?
They've got a lot of similarities with Manchester City. As we found in the first game, that was one of the difficulties. Their midfield 3 were technically very good. They've got really good movements and rotations in their team, so stabilising off the ball, making sure we engage our press at the right times, and then making sure we keep the ball when we get it. These are all big things. We need to be a goal threat, and we need our attacking players to fire.
Thank you. Craig Hope.
I'm going to ask you a question about Barcelona 97, just quickly in the secondary. But first of all, that statement about this being the biggest game potentially in club's recent history, is part of that motivated by legends, legacy? This literally is Barcelona in a knockout game, once in a lifetime stuff. The question came after an FA Cup game. The FA Cup comes around next year. Is it the one-off nature of this and the chance to write your name and the player's name in the club's history? Is that the allure and the romanticism which is sort of captivating?
Yeah, to a point, yes. I think that there's only 16 teams left, and we're one of them. So I think it's very much an opportunity to grab a moment that we may never get again. You don't know what life brings tomorrow, let alone future seasons. We don't want to waste that opportunity. Don't want to kick ourselves and think what ifs. So I think this is a moment for us to try and grab. Since my time here, just over 4 years, we've worked to get to this point. So as long as we perform to our maximum, we'll have to accept the result. But we want to try and get as close as we can to our very best.
In Barcelona 97, you were a 19-year-old young professional at Bournemouth. It was live on ITV. Did you watch it? Can you remember where you were watching memories of that?
Yeah, I watched the game. I don't remember where I was. I assume I was at home, but memory is a bit hazy of that time of my life. I think I was very, very focused on my own playing career at the time and the early stages of that. But I think you couldn't not watch that moment. It was on terrestrial TV. It was one of those legendary games. And of course, going back to your earlier question, we want people in future years to be talking about this team. And of course, Tino Asprilla gets a hat-trick, mainly off Keith Gillespie's delivery on the right. And I'd want our players to be talked about in the same way 20, 30, 40 years later.
Thank you. Gentleman at the back, yeah.
Hi, Eddie.
Hi.
I don't know how many references you've taken from the game back in September. As the game progressed, Barcelona forced you to look into not a low block, but a deeper block, certainly. Looking back, do you feel that was an unavoidable consequence of their quality? Or is it something you want to resist?
Yeah, I think it's an unavoidable, or on the night it was an unavoidable reaction to their quality. I thought their midfield three on the day did really, really well to try and control the game and to make the game as they wanted it to. And I thought they were the standout players that really helped swing that game in their direction. So of course for us we had our moments, as I say, especially in that first half, and opportunities to score that we didn't take, and ultimately you sort of look back at the end of the game and you think they're the key moments in the game, because if we went on top to score, I think that's the key thing. And even against Manchester City at the weekend, we got our noses in front, but we couldn't stabilise and push on. There's definitely parallels between that game and this game that we need to adjust and do better with.
Thank you. Gentleman just in front in the middle here, yeah. Yes?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Can I talk in Spanish?
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to ask as well the difference between the phase of classification and Lamine. So do you think how to defend against Lamine Yamal, or do you think he's one of the best players in the world? Thank you.
I didn't get all of that question, I'm afraid. I'll try and answer what I think you're... So tell me if it's wrong. Yeah, he's an outstanding player. We obviously didn't face him in the first game, so I think it's a great challenge for us to try and deal with his qualities. He's been in outstanding form. Watching the recent games, I've been hugely impressed by him. So I think in the wide areas off both sides, they've got huge threats. We're going to have to defend very, very well, and better than we did at the weekend in the wide areas. And then, of course, as I said earlier, we have to bring our threats as well, and we have to make sure that they're there in the game for us to win.
Okay, thank you. Martin Hardy.
The game against Barcelona in 1997 is regarded as one of the best atmospheres the stadium has ever had. Is your message to the supporters to recreate that tomorrow night?
In an ideal world, yes, but of course, there's a reason why it was the best atmosphere, or so-called best atmosphere that you say is because the team played so well. Scored 3 goals. They could have scored more as well. Some brilliant attacking from the team and some late pressure from Barcelona, but that's why, because the team gave the crowd what it needed, and that's what we have to do tomorrow. I think the start of the game against Barcelona here was again red hot. The atmosphere was incredible. We just couldn't carry it through. We couldn't do our bit to sort of confirm that up there with the previous game. So I think it's all on us. I know the crowd will be there when needed to help us.
And how are the players getting through this weekend?
They're doing okay. They're doing okay. I think it's not been a perfect season for us. It's not been easy. But I think their attitude to it all has been really, really good. We're always trying to find new ways to improve and to evolve and to help the team. I think the players have taken that workload on, and the consistency of it really well. We're going to need a big physical effort tomorrow. It's another short turnaround after a really big game against Manchester City, where we had a lot of running to do. So it wasn't, again, ideal preparation for this one, but no excuses. The players will be ready.
Thank you. Gary Stonehouse.
Hi, Reddy. Given every season since you've been in the club's groping new frontiers, you said this is the biggest game in recent history. Would it be your biggest achievement at the club if you can take Newcastle into the last eight?
Yeah, possibly, but I'm not really. Well, I don't care about myself and my record or what people think. It's for the club, really. I want the club desperate for the club to break new ground and to keep going in this competition, having worked so hard to get here. So we're all thinking of the club. We're trying to support the players to give the best performance that we've given so far. And I think we're going to need to break new ground in terms of performance level. So if there's a time for us to be at our absolute best, it's in these 2 games. Thank you.
Dominic?
About having a lot of players who were maxed out after the Man U game, Joe Linton, Anthony Gordon, Jacob Ramsey rested for Man City. Just how's the squad looking? How are they doing?
Yeah, I think we came through the Manchester City game okay, relatively okay. I think no fresh injuries. We've got a little bit of illness again in the camp, so it's been sort of hanging around in recent days. We'll have a player go down, but they're recovering quite quickly. So I anticipate, fingers crossed, we won't lose anybody, and we'll be as we were with Tino Livramento back in the squad.
You touched on it before, but Lamine Yamal involved tomorrow night. Lewis Hall also wasn't involved, or was on the bench unused, so we game earlier in the season. How exciting battle is that shaping up to be between two the best players in their positions in terms of young players?
Yeah, I think providing on team selection, I think that will be an interesting battle between two really good players, as you say. There's a lot of intriguing battles across the pitch when you look at the teams and you line them up, and certainly sort of player for player, when you go up against a respective player in that position, you've got to try and come out on top, and that's going to be my message to the group. We need to win our individual duels. We need to win the tussles in those big moments, because that could be a pivotal turn of the game. We're looking for one moment of magic from an attacking player, and of course we've got to concentrate better defensively.
Okay, we've got time for one more. Damien Spellman.
Just on Lewis, you were very patient in introducing him to the first team when he first came. How impressed have you been with his development since, and where is he on his journey?
I think he's done incredibly well. I think it was a steep sort of learning curve for him when he first came in, not just sort of on and off the pitch, but more in his personal life, having left his family home and all the challenges that go with that for someone being so young. I think with Lewis, he's one of those players that we forget how young he is at times. He's very quiet. He's sort of goes about his business in a very uncomplicated way. But in that first season, he really had to show his resilient side. He had to do a lot of individual work, group work, development work to become the player he is today. And I think there's still a lot more to come from him. I think he's definitely on the right track. He's come back from a serious injury and he's beginning to find his very, very best form again. I think he's such an exciting player, one that I think will continue to go from strength to strength, we hope.
Thank you very much, everybody. Apologies to anyone we missed out with time. Lewis Hall will be with you in just a minute. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Cheers. All the best.
Yeah.
This one. This one.
Hi guys. Guys, we're ready to start, please. We've got our 15 minutes with Lewis. I'm aware it's a very busy room. Keith, if you want to start us off.
Lewis, nice to see you. It's been a haze of big games these last few weeks, or these last few days, I guess. But how are you feeling about the prospect of Barcelona in the last 16 of the Champions League?
Yeah, we're really excited as a team. Obviously, round of 16 is something that the club's not been in before, and yeah, we know that it's a really important game for us as a club, for me as a fan. So yeah, we're all really excited, and we're looking forward to hopefully putting a good performance on.
If selected, you're most likely to come up against Lamine Yamal over on that side. How much of a challenge is that for you? Are you looking forward to it? Are you worried? What's your overall feeling?
Yeah, I think it goes without saying he's obviously a special talent. I've seen him play in enough Champions League games. I know what he's about. So for me, if I was to be selected, it's obviously I'll be really looking forward to it. And for me, I want to test myself against the best players in the world. So no better opportunity to do so than the game tomorrow. So really looking forward to it.
Damien, Craig, then Lee Ryder, please.
Lewis, as a young player, you sometimes have to pinch yourself when you think back at what you've achieved over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think so. I think for me, sometimes I don't like to do that too much because I like to take everything in my stride. I think that's an important thing for a young player to do. I think anyone who gets caught up sort of in the moment it can all become a bit overwhelming. So I think it's important that you sort of just take everything as it goes along, take game by game, and sort of just think about how you can improve what you've done and sort of what you can do for the next game. And I think that's my mentality at the minute.
Craig?
You don't want to come across starry-eyed because you're on your own brilliant journey, you know, but Lamine Yamal, what's been your observation of him from afar, coming through, got this chance to play against him now, do you play with him on a video game? What's your relationship with Lamine Yamal from afar, of course?
My relationship with him is no different to any other player. I know the moments that he can produce, I know what he's like as a player, but I think they've got so many different threats in their team, so I think to single one out individually, as good of a player as he is, I think that would be not a smart thing to do. So I think for us as the team, we're just looking at their threats and how we can nullify them and what we can do to win the game.
Lee, then Nisha, please.
Lewis, obviously you had the injury 12 months ago. It was a frustrating one. You came off the pitch at Anfield, not only you knew you'd been injured, did you? So it was a very tough time. Fast forward now, you must be relishing this and quite grateful that all that's behind you.
Yeah, 100%. I think that was a difficult moment. Obviously, I wasn't expecting the results of my scans to come back as what they were, and obviously missed the Carabao Cup final, which is obviously gutting for me. And yeah, I think it's something that I've learned a lot from mentally, and I think it's made me mentally stronger. But yeah, like you said, to be in the position now, round of 16 in the Champions League tomorrow against Barcelona, I think I'm really looking forward to it, and I think everything I've been through so far has put me in the position now, and yeah, I'm looking forward to tomorrow.
Now as a team, this is everything now, isn't it, really, the Champions League? You could get the Europa Conference League via the league, but this is a big opportunity now for everybody.
Yeah, 100%. We know the importance of tomorrow as a fixture in general. Obviously, there's still enough games to go in the league that we can turn it around and stuff like that. But yeah, I think we just need to put that to the side for now and just focus on tomorrow's game, as that's the most important thing right now.
Nisha, then Mark, please.
Hi Lewis, your performances this season have Champions League, also a World Cup. How much motivation has that given you?
Yeah, it's definitely a motivating factor. I think for me, as I've said before, I like to take every game by game. I'm still young, I'm still learning about how I can improve, how I can influence the team in better ways and things like that. So yeah, I think it's a big opportunity tomorrow. And like you said, Champions League, World Cup, they're obviously massive competitions. But for me, I don't really think about that too much. I just think about what I can do to help the team in the next game and yeah, how we can do our best to win.
The manager and the players have said throughout the season that you've saved your best for this competition. Where can you reach? What level can you get to in terms of performance? And is there a real belief that you can knock out one of the best clubs in the world?
Yeah, I think we've been in really good form this Champions League campaign. I think it's been obviously a bit frustrating comparing that to sort of our league form at the minute. But yeah, if we look purely at our Champions League campaign so far, I think we can be really proud of the performances and the efforts that we've put in. And I think throughout the seasons and the last couple of seasons as well, I think we've shown that on our day that we can be a good game against anyone. And I truly believe as a member of this team that I feel like we can beat anyone on our day, because I feel like we've got a lot of quality, we've got the passion, and obviously we've got a really passionate set of supporters as well, as everyone will know. So yeah, we're all looking forward to tomorrow, and it's a massive opportunity for us.
Thank you.
Mark and Gary, please.
The manager's just said it's possibly one of the biggest games in the club's recent history. Is that how you see it? Is it one of the biggest games of your career?
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely up there. I think I've played a lot of games now that have been really important for my development as a player. But I think when you get to this sort of end in the competition, becomes the business end of the competition really. Yeah, round of 16 in the Champions League over 2 legs. I wouldn't say that I've played in any bigger games than that, so yeah, tomorrow's going to be a big one for me, but I'm looking forward to it.
Obviously you're too young to remember 97 and all that, but is that kind of the idea of becoming a legend like that? Does that appeal to you?
Yeah, obviously when we played them in the group stages, that was when I first heard about that result, sort of. So yeah, I knew sort of what an iconic moment that was in a sense. So yeah, I guess tomorrow is going to be another opportunity where we can maybe put in another performance that Newcastle fans and Newcastle as a club can look back on as a real turning point and sort of, well, a proud moment for the club really.
Gary, then Louise, please.
Lewis, have you ever stepped onto a football pitch fearing coming up against an opponent? And as you progress through, obviously, you've got hopes of making the World Cup. Is that just go completely out? You might have a respect, but is the fear factor just gone now?
Yeah, 100%. I think if you're going onto a football pitch fearing or worrying about anything, I think that already puts you on the back foot personally. I think for me, I always go on with a positive mindset. Self-belief, I think, is an important thing, because I think if you don't believe in yourself, then I think it makes it hard for anyone else to do so. So for me, whenever I'm playing, I've been playing football for 18, 19 years, obviously, different journey to sort of what other people might have, but obviously I know my own journey, and for me personally, I think my journey's been special. And yeah, I'm looking forward to sort of every game as it comes, and yeah, tomorrow's a big opportunity for me and for the team, so yeah, we're all excited.
And just last one from me. We spoke here in November where you opened up about speaking with a psychologist and stuff when you were coming back. All that hard work and things you've done, some people are reluctant to speak out or seek help. Has it all been worthwhile for moments like this tomorrow night? Knockout game against Barcelona in the Champions League. Can you just talk us through that?
Yeah, I think it's important in football. I feel like as a footballer, you're always sort of in the limelight. You're always being sort of judged on a lot of things that you do within football and also outside of football. So I think it's important that you feel like you can speak freely with different people, whether that is with family, friends, or whoever it may be. But I think as a footballer, if you can do what you can to put yourself in the right mindset and to be mentally as secure and stable as possible. I genuinely feel like that definitely helps with performances, and for me personally, being able to speak to my friends, family, etc., I feel like that's helped me be the person and player I am now. So,
Louise, and then the gentleman behind you. Louise first, then you next.
Barcelona came into Matfin Hall yesterday. They've had a kind of couple of days, it would appear, decompressing. How have you prepared for the game after City?
I'll be honest, no different to a normal game. I think if you get caught up in the moment too much of who you're playing and the occasion, it can be a negative. So yeah, we've just been preparing as normal, treating it as any other game, but we know when the kick-off comes tomorrow night, we'll be ready for the game.
Because it's a fine line between being oversighted up and undersighted up.
Yeah, 100%. You can use it in both ways. You want to use it to your advantage. We know that the fans will be behind us right from minute one throughout the whole game. But yeah, like you said, you don't want to get too carried away and get too ahead of yourselves, because sometimes you can get caught up in the moment a little bit, which can affect maybe performances and things like that. But yeah, I think we've prepared in the right way, and I think we'll find the balance right tomorrow.
Gentleman behind.
I can imagine that tomorrow is going to be one of the most challenging days, as well as defending against Lamine Yamal. Are you aware of his tactics? Can you comment on that? What are you going to do about that? Thank you.
Yeah, obviously, as I said before, we know the qualities that Lamine Yamal has. But yeah, it's as I said before, it's a team game, and they've got so many talented players in their team. And yeah, we've obviously analysed them a lot in what ways we think that what things we need to do to hurt them, and how we can prevent them from hurting us. So yeah, it's going to be a big balance. It's going to be an important balance that we find that tomorrow. So yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Yep.
In Spanish as well, please. El partido de vuelta se juega en el Camp Nou con la afición del Barça a favor. ¿Cómo de importante es para
Barca is going to be an advantage. What do you think you can do to overcome this elimination, and how do you feel about the next game? Thank you.
Yeah, we obviously know it's going to be really difficult.
Sí, sabemos que va a ser complicado. Sabemos que también el partido de vuelta.
But I think for now there's such an important game tomorrow that we need to purely just focus on what we can do tomorrow. So when we do go there, we can hopefully take a positive result there, and yeah, so that's what we need to do.
Kieran Kelly, Martin Hardy, and then Daniel Wales, please.
Hi, Lewis. You previously mentioned you had some dark days when you first joined the club. Could you have imagined a night like tomorrow night, thinking back to those days?
Yeah, I've obviously been through a journey here at Newcastle. I think when I first signed, it was obviously a difficult period for me. Signing for what I knew was obviously quite a significant fee at the time, considering the amount of football that I'd actually played. I knew the sort of pressure that came with that, but I never sort of didn't believe in myself. I always believed in my own ability, and I had that belief from my teammates, from the coaches as well. But yeah, I think it's important that I managed to stay strong, work hard every day, did what I can to improve. And I think that put me in a good position last season, which I feel like last season was the turning point for me in terms of me as a player and as a person. Obviously, it was cut short at the end a little bit by injury, which was disappointing, but I think then having to deal with that obviously made this season me more motivated than ever to do what I did last season and just improve from there. So yeah, to now be playing in the round of 16 in the Champions League is incredibly special, considering where I've come from.
You've worked a lot on the defensive side of your game. How much of a help is Jason and the staff doing with that?
Yeah, a massive help. Obviously JT, the gaffer, all the coaches really, and all my teammates as well. There's been a lot of defenders that I've worked with at the club who, when I first joined, definitely helped me learn the ways that we would defend here. And I think that was a big area of my game that needed to improve when I signed. So yeah, I think I've done that. I've done that pretty well, I'd say, in terms of how I've improved on my attitudes. But yeah, again, I'm still 21. I'm still young. I'm still looking to continue to improve that. And I think as a team this year, I'd say we probably haven't defended the way we'd like to in terms of conceding goals. But yeah, we're looking to improve that now.
Matt, and then Daniel's finish, please.
Hi, Lewis. Is it right that your dad and your uncle are Newcastle fans?
My dad is, yes.
Was he here in '97 against Barcelona, do you know?
It's a good question. I haven't actually asked him. I know he obviously knows a lot about the game and whatever, but that'll be one to ask him when I get home today. So.
What has your development then as a Newcastle United player meant to him?
Yeah, it's meant everything really. I think the first sort of couple of months of me being a Newcastle player was a change to the system for him, because obviously he's always proud of me and he's always travelled to watch me play regardless of where I'm playing. But I think for me to now be playing for a team that he's grew up supporting and he's had so many highs and lows with, I think is massive for him. And to see me playing for Newcastle at the minute every week is obviously something that he's very proud of me for, and I'm really grateful that I can let him have these memories.
And how are you coping with the amount of games that you're playing at the moment?
Yeah, it's obviously really difficult physically, mentally as well. But I think it can also be a positive. I think if you're winning games, it's quite easy to maintain that momentum. Obviously, it's physically incredibly challenging, having to go again and again sometimes. But I think it can be used as an advantage to build up momentum. And as well, I think negatively, if you do lose a game, I think it's important that the next game can come around quickly so that you can sort of get that bad result or bad performance out your system and sort of start afresh. So I think it's good in both ways.
Daniel's finish off, please.
Hi Lewis, just one of your development again. I spoke to you after you played for England under 21s against Austria under 21s at Kenilworth Road. I think that was in September 2024. You put him on a match display then, and that's less than 2 years ago. Since then, you've become a regular starter at Newcastle, obviously despite that injury. Can you just talk to me about the development and the biggest factors and influences you've had in that short period to go from then to now where you've been in this game and perhaps in contention for the World Cup as well?
Yeah, I think that's the thing with football that I think a lot of people don't see. You have a lot of highs, you have a lot of lows, and I think it's important that when you do have the highs, it's important to sort of appreciate it and be proud of yourself, but at the same time not get too ahead of yourself. And I think it's important that you, once you've celebrated your achievements, you then get back to sort of being level-headed and thinking about what's next. And yeah, I think as for the lows, you have a lot of lows in football. Everyone throughout their career will have had games or moments where they know that they've not performed very well or have had to go through an injury or anything like that. And I think it's important that when you do have these highs and you're in a low, for example, if you've had an injury, it's important that you think of the times you've sort of almost been in really good form as an example, and think about that's what you're doing it for, and that's what's worth it all in the end. So yeah, I think football's a massive journey for everyone, and yeah, I'm really grateful of my journey so far, and I still feel like there's a lot more to come from me and from this team, and yeah, we're looking to show that.
Thank you guys.
Nice one. Cheers. Thank you.